The 5th episode of the new Disney Gallery Mandalorian documentary is now up and available on Disney+. And this time, we're finally talking about Baby Yoda. And also IG-11 and Kuiil the Ugnaught and more. It's a ton of fun, and it's one of the longest episodes so far. And I'm going to break it all down after the intro. Well, hello there. My name's Jeremy and welcome back to Freeform Disney, where I talk about all aspects of Disney, from the animated movies to the theme parks to Star Wars, Marvel, and Pixar, and the TV shows, and everything else in between. And that is why it's Freeform. And keep coming back every day for new daily content. If you're not subscribed yet, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We're over halfway through the Disney Gallery show, wow, I'll admit I'm happy to have seen all of these, but also sad to see fewer ahead than behind. But enough of that. But what about this episode? Did our Mandalorian documentary universe continue to expand this episode? Well, yes, it certainly did. In fact, we talked with 9 new people in this episode. Pretty big expansion. So we actually had a couple more actors in there, we had our props guy, we had a whole bunch of people from Legacy and a bunch of puppeteers, a whole bunch of new people here. No new tables though, same 3 tables. I don't think we're ever adding another one of those tables to the mix. And well, heck, let's just jump straight on into the episode. Here's what went down. So we started off with Rick Famuyiwa really talking about what makes Star Wars in his opinion. And he really talks about how he feels it's the mix of everything. How, sure, it's got cutting edge technology, it's got a great mix of puppetry and animatronics, and, well, the volume here in The Mandalorian, and also great actors. But you mix all of that and you make sure that it's relatable at a human level to all of us. And that's what he feels makes Star Wars. Really just that ability for it all to feel real. A real world that, hey, we could imagine ourselves being there, or want to be there. Well said, Rick. Well said. I agree. Heck, probably anyone watching this has at some point envisioned themselves in the Star Wars galaxy. I'm just saying. And probably in numerous different areas, whether we be talking out in the Outer Rim like we are here in The Mandalorian, or maybe more in some of the core worlds, or who knows where, right? Part of the Rebellion, part of the Old Republic, lots and lots of choices right there. When there was talk about the practical effects and how Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni really talk a lot about how it's like playing with their Star Wars toys, getting their Boba Fett figure out and their Jawa and having them fight, and how they're just having one hell of a good time on the show. And really, they're doing Star Wars, you better be having a good time, right? Otherwise, why the heck are you doing it? Oh, and I love Jon Favreau talking about making sure to get some of those more minor characters, the ones that are complete background, as he calls them the D-listers, and really getting to see some stuff from their perspective or getting to see them in this series here so we can expand upon them. Something I've always loved about the EU, and really just getting to see characters that might have been really small. Then we jumped into talking about the Ugnaught, and that was cool. So the Ugnaught is physically played by Misty Roses, it's voiced by Nick Nolte, and then there's also a puppeteer for the mouth and a puppeteer for the eyebrows, so it takes a lot of people to put that together. So we're not talking about CG here, we're not talking about just some animatronic by itself, or even just a prosthetic. No, it's an animatronic prosthetic up on there, so she's got to deal with all of those servos and everything else while trying to act. Whole load of fun right there. And heck, who the heck does not like Kuiil? Kuiil was awesome. And I gotta imagine the intriguing trick it is as a director directing someone like Kuiil, where the lines have already been recorded, there's a few different versions of it. You've got Misty over in the outfit, having to move around, but then you've also got the 2 puppeteers. But back to, like is commented here and on other ones where puppets are used too, it's like directing a normal character, so it's different and yet similar at the same time. That's what we heard from our directors here too. And like directing any actor, it changes depending on the actors, right? Okay, but here's what we've all been waiting for, right? We're all been waiting to hear about Baby Yoda. And so we spent a good little bit of time talking about Baby Yoda, or as they referred to him throughout here, not as the child. No, they referred to him as Baby. So that was actually the common parlance for how Baby Yoda was referred to during the course of the show and the production. Bryce Dallas Howard really talked about how she was happy to have the practicals actually there in front of her, really so you could have that thing to interact with. Kind of like how we talked about the volume last time, and how it's really cool to actually have that there instead of a green screen and having to imagine it, but being able to actually interact with it at that point and see what the audience will see too. So you're actually in that world. Having the practicals here like this, rather than having them be pure CG afterward, also does some of that same kind of thing. And Werner Herzog had some cool stuff that he talked about how we're getting to the point where anything is possible. How he feels filmmaking is almost going back to old school because technology has gotten so far that you can actually make it happen right there. It becomes invisible. And that's just too cool. I mean, just like the volume, just like some of the cool animatronics, and to make these cool puppets like Baby Yoda just look so real and lifelike. Even when you see the puppeteers in the same shot, he still looks so lifelike. And heck, he looks so lifelike that Deborah Chow even told us how Werner Herzog at one point seemed to have even forgotten that Baby Yoda was a puppet and was directing Baby Yoda as if he were a character. Oh, I love it. So good. And everybody interacting with Baby Yoda like that seemed to be a relatively common thing throughout the different cast and crew. I mean, heck, Gina Carano talked about how they were all talking to it. You know, like, oh, look at the little baby today. How's the baby feeling? And how really, even though you know it's not real, you're doing the same thing yourself just because you interact with Baby Yoda like that. So cool. So very cool. I can't imagine I'd be any different if I were on that set. Can't imagine I'd be any different at all. Because he's just so cool and lifelike. Look at him. Well, they talked also about how the design came about. The big ears, the big eyes. Of course, the big ears especially are super Yoda in the first place, so we had to have that. And how Jon Favreau was working on this VR project, Gnomes and Goblins, for ages, which really focused on big ears and big eyes and having a face that's not all that expressive. And so there's a commonality here, and he wanted to work with that, and well, he certainly did work with that and succeeded. And then all the drawings that came forth as it got closer and closer to what version they actually wanted. And there was some great artwork in there. And then it finally got to the real spot the Baby Yoda were more used to when Legacy came in and really started spending all their time fully making their images and then building Baby Yoda, which apparently took about 3 months to do. And John Rosengrant talked a good bit throughout this episode because he's a Legacy Effects supervisor and was involved in all of these different projects here that Legacy was doing, whether it be on our Ugnaught Kuiil or whether it be here on Baby Yoda, so on and so forth. Now, Baby Yoda takes a team of 4 to 5 puppeteers to actually work. So you got Jason Matthews doing the eyes. You got Hiroshi Kan Ikuchi doing the ears and mouth. You got Mike Manzel doing the arm movements, doing the walking sequences, and some other gross body movement. And then you've got Trevor Hensley doing the rest of the gross body movements and also the head. And then the fifth potential was Tamara Carlson Woodard, who rotated in as she was needed, and, well, hey, she also made the costume. It takes all of them working in concert to get Baby Yoda to go. And, whew, there's some trickiness. All of those controllers having to go ahead and pull together. And, man, they did one heck of a job. Very, very well done. And I feel like this documentary was probably shot before The Mandalorian started going live back in November. Just from how some people are talking. Not sure. But especially some of the talk about how Pedro Pascal was saying, hey, we're all going to be doing second fiddle to this little guy. That's how cool he is. Well, he was certainly right about that. Baby Yoda stole the show right there. Heck, he stole the show so much that he was a super sold out toy for Christmas and was, months and months and months until people could actually go ahead and get a hold of their Baby Yoda toys. Yep. Okay, onward from Baby Yoda. Let's talk about a few others here that happened. We have IG-11 was talked about a little bit, and some interesting stuff that happened on IG-11. So, yes, certainly inspired by IG-88, another in the IG line right there. Now, one of the intriguing things is Richard Bluff talked a lot about how IG-11, the way he came about as an actual physical, practical puppet, was actually essentially a happy accident of the show. So they had just gone ahead and built this stand-in for lighting reference, but they had put enough work into that stand-in that it was able to be wheeled around. You could actually use it for close-up shots on the head, and the way it was rickety and the way it moved, actually inspired the CG as well because of just those styles of movements, the sharp, awkward movements. And heck, the practical actually got used in a lot of medium shots and close-ups, intriguingly enough, just because it was built so nicely that they loved it. So pretty cool right there. Pretty cool. So even when you think you're going all the way CG on something, or mostly CG, sometimes those maquettes go ahead and throw you for a loop right there. And then we moved on and we talked about the blurgs very briefly because we had some stop motion blurgs in there. And, well, they've certainly worked. And apparently they brought Tony McVeigh in to go ahead and do those stop motion blurgs. The same guy who way back made Salacious Crumb. And he made Salacious Crumb and remade him here for The Mandalorian. As well as another Kowakian monkey lizard who was, well, being roasted to be eaten. And that's definitely cool as well. Really cool to bring the Kowakian monkey lizards in here. And they talked about how you had this giant guy puppeteering Salacious Crumb up underneath that cage. We didn't get to see any good images of it, but, it was still a nice little story. Just all the different puppets we had and other practicals. Oh yeah, good times. Good times. And we did get to go say hi to our props master, at least for a briefest of bits, so he could talk about the blasters and other weapons within The Mandalorian. And there was some cool relation as to how they really tried to work in the same kind of way that George Lucas was in the original trilogy. And so what they did here was they also, just like the original trilogy, went for World War II weapons and put modifications on them so as to get that same kind of feel and look to them. And I gotta say, great job. Now, the last section of this episode of Disney Gallery The Mandalorian was an interesting one. They called it Tales from the AV Club. And we really got to see the nerdy side, shall we say, of some of them. Jon Favreau talking about how kind of you get in these conversations and get to see if other people are as nerdy as you are. And how he learned from Guillermo del Toro that, hey, if you build a miniature, you get to have it in your house. So apparently he did that over in Zathura, as well as liking the miniatures anyway. And they also did Moko here because they really wanted to have a miniature, a cool little thing. And Moko, by the way, is the Razor Crest model that they've got. And because it wasn't actually budgeted for, they had this whole garage operation where they went ahead and built it. And even then, it was only going to be used originally for a lighting reference. Well, and then maybe for a shot. Then maybe a few. And apparently, in the end, it got used in 14 to 15 shots. I mean, dang, that was really cool looking. So now I have to ask, is it over in Jon Favreau's house? Probably not yet. Show's still going right now. We also had a whole bunch of talk about the history. Hal Hickles talking about how he went ahead and looked a lot about how the camera moved, why it did, making CG versions of stuff from the original trilogy, talking about how George Lucas went ahead and used Battle of Britain and Dam Busters for how ships move, and talking about really getting the star field in the background so you can track the background and, well, so you can really feel ships move, because otherwise against a straight black background, things don't feel like they move as much. And how they did that here in The Mandalorian as well. And then, as we certainly have sometimes done, Dave Filoni then brings it all home at the end of the episode. He talks about how one of the things that he really loved and one of the things he really wanted when he came to Lucasfilm was really the legacy and being involved in that. Because you have all this firsthand knowledge that gets passed down from one person to another because all this technology was built by George Lucas and everyone involved way back in the original trilogy, and it's kept being worked on since. And so you have huge amounts of institutional knowledge and energy and enthusiasm, and you can actually contact some of those people and tap into that knowledge. And so it's that whole environment and culture, and this may not be the legacy episode, but we still certainly talk about legacy. And hey, you can count on Dave Filoni to put it all together and bring it home at the end. And so that was our 5th episode of Disney Gallery The Mandalorian. Now, frankly, for me, I could have spent an entire 30 minutes just looking at Baby Yoda and talking about Baby Yoda. Don't get me wrong. I would have put everything else that we had into another episode because I'm not going to lose that. That was really cool too. But dang, just like pretty much everything, I could dive deeper into it. I love diving behind the scenes and getting to talk with all the people who are involved in the production, getting to learn all these cool little details. Love it. And this was definitely a good episode. And what about next week? Next week, we're going to go ahead and have an episode called Visualization. So it sounds like it's really going to be time to dive into the CG next time. Also, maybe we'll have some previs with some themes like storyboards and concept art. So that's going to be coming up next week. And now, I'm going to ask you, well, what about you? Should I ask if you love Baby Yoda? Is there even a point to asking that? I mean, who doesn't love Baby Yoda? So aside from Baby Yoda, what were some of your favorite models or animatronics in The Mandalorian? Or heck, props too for that matter. Let me know down below in the comments. And thanks for watching. If you liked the video, you know what to do. Give it a like, share it with other people who will too. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't. And come back tomorrow for another new episode of Freeform Disney. Have a magical day, and may the Force be with you. Always.